So this is the formal opening of the student chat with Mayor Baraka. I'm Antoinette Richardson. I will be your host for this event. Welcome to the Mayor's Book Club Student Chat with Mayor Baraka and the young people from Rutgers Newark Center for Pre-College Programs. We know that there are a number of programs under that umbrella and that you may be in one or the other of them. In a few minutes, when you get the opportunity to introduce yourselves, if you wish, you can say what program it is that you participate in or what it is that you do. Not a whole biography because we have a very, very short on time, but just to give us a snippet, of who you are, what school you go to, what grade you will be in September, and if you wish, what the program is that you participate in, what school you go to. Okay. So the Mayor's Book Club, this is actually this June right now. This marks 2 complete years of the Mayor's Book Club, which was started 2 years ago. And the Mayor's Book Club is supported by a number of funders and anchor organizations throughout the city and other partners on our steering committee. And here are some of them, because we like to give credit to the people who support us. Panasonic Foundation, Audible, the Newark Public Library, Victoria Foundation, the United Way, Rutgers University, Newark City of Learning Collaborative, the Schumann Fund, New Jersey Children's Foundation, Newark Trust for Education. Over the last 2 years, all of those organizations, and probably some that unfortunately, I apologize, but I may be forgetting, have helped to make the Mayor's Book Club a reality and an ongoing reality in the city of Newark. So I want to remind all of the participants, it would be very helpful to you if you put your device on speaker view so that so that you won't be seeing everybody all at the same time, but that you will be able to keep your attention to the person who is speaking at a particular time. So please, if you're not on speaker view, if you're on gallery view, please set your device to speaker view now. So I'm really excited about today's discussion. This book, the Mayor's Book Club Choice, When They Call You a Terrorist, it's available. Hear this and let your friends know. It is available at the Newark Public Library, the main one downtown, or any of its branches. You can just walk in and you'll see it on a table, or you can ask for it. Okay, and there are books there that you can have for free, that your friends can have for free. You can't walk out with a handful of them, but you can walk out with one for yourself, and you can tell your friends to come and get and to come and get their copy. If you belong to a group and the whole group is going to read the book, you can let me know, and you can let Ms. Berryman know. She'll let me know, and we'll make sure that you get enough books for your group. I know you guys already have the book, but maybe you belong to another group of young people or older people who would be interested in reading the book. Remember, it's free. It's yours to keep. You don't have to check it out. It is a gift from Mayor Baraka to you. So now there's going to be a discussion in a few minutes just between you guys and Mayor Baraka. And this is a small group. So you, as I said, you'll have time to engage with the mayor, to exchange ideas. And we just ask that you not be shy, okay? And that you engage with the mayor as he will engage with you. At this time, I'm going to ask Dr. Shanae Brown, who was a former principal at Central High School and who is now joining the mayor's team. And she is coming on as the Chief Education Officer for Mayor Baraka. So Dr. Brown, I'd like to say congratulations on your new position. And yes, and welcome. And you can bring greetings to the students at this time.
I just want to say hello, everyone. I want to start off by saying thank you, Honorable Mayor Baraka, for a wonderful opportunity to serve this great city of Newark. I want to thank Antoinette Richardson for all of her support in passing the baton, and it's an honor to come in your stead. I just want to say hello to the director, Berryman. How are you? And to all the wonderful, wonderful students that are on this panel. Hello, and I see Kalima's Belt from Central High School, so that makes me excited. And I just want to say hello to some of the partners that I see that I'm familiar with. Hello, it's an honor to participate in this great work. And I'm very interested in hearing the voices of the young people because I'm always learning whenever they speak. So hello, everyone, and it's an honor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and welcome again. And now we will hear welcome remarks from Kalina Berryman, Ms. Kalina Berryman, who is the director of the Abbott Leadership Group.
Hello, everyone. We meet again. Thank you to Mayor Baraka for this opportunity. We want you to know that there were over 40 young people who participated in reading this book together as a part of the Center for Pre-College Programs, which includes the Abbott Leadership Institute, Upward Bound, and Rutgers Future Scholars. We had 2 events around this book. We had a game night where we gave out prizes. We've given out a few $1,000s in gift cards to the young people for getting the answers right. And then we had a second book club discussion where once young people read all of the book to talk about it. So this is the 3rd time. And the young people that are here with us today are those who have stayed the course. They were the most engaged. They were the most committed. And I'm really glad that even though school is over and we started this process 6 weeks ago, they're still here today to talk to you. So thanks, guys, so much for showing up. And thank you, Mayor Baraka, for the opportunity. We had a lot of fun.
Thank you, Director Berryman. And now we're going to ask each of the students to please take under 1 minute to introduce yourselves. Mayor Baraka, as you know, these students participate in Rutgers pre-college program. So, and you also know Director Berryman, so you know that they have been prepped not only in the contents of the book, but I'm just willing to bet they've had all kind of political conversations also. So I expect that this is going to be a pretty vigorous kind of a conversation. So for young people, I'd like to ask you to introduce yourselves. I'll call the names that I see up here and I'll just say the names and then you can like start and introduce yourselves in the order. I'm looking at the participants on the participant list. I'm just gonna say the whole list. I see Ashlyn, I see Blair, Israel, Kalima, Mercy, Michelle, and Shakina, and yes. So if you could introduce yourselves in that order. If you forgot what I said, just look on the participant list. So we will be starting with Ashlyn.
Hi, my name is Ashlyn Jimenez. I am a rising 10th grader at Science Park High School, and I am a participant of Rutgers Future Scholars.
Thank you. Blair?
Good afternoon. My name is Blair Guerrero. I am a rising senior at East Orange STEM Academy, and I am part of the Rutgers Cheer Upper Brown program.
Thank you. Who would be next? Israel?
Hello, everyone. My name is Israel. I'm part of the Abbott Leadership Institute. I'm a senior at Rutgers University North.
Thank you. Who is next? Kalima?
Yes,
Your name?
my name is Kalima Phelps, and I go to Central High School.
What grade will you be in next year?
11.
Thank you so much and welcome. And Mercy?
Hi, my name is Mercy. I'll be a Rutgers North freshman in the fall, and I'm a part of the Abbott Leadership Institute, specifically Youth Media Symposium.
Thank you. And what high school did you graduate from?
University High School.
Thank you. Michelle?
Hi everyone, my name is Michelle Hunter. I'm a rising sophomore at Princeton University and I'm a part of the Abbott Leadership Institute.
Okay, and you said you're a rising, I'm sorry, I missed that.
Sophomore at Princeton
Okay.
University.
Great, thank you. And Sakina?
Yeah, good evening. I am Shakina Goy Piromba. I'm a rising senior at East Orange Campus High School, and I'm part of the Rutgers Upward Bound program.
Thank you. Did I miss anyone? I did not. And now, without further ado, I am going to introduce to some and reintroduce to many our mayor, Mayor Raz Baraka, who has an background in education and who loves young people. And I will shut my mouth now. Welcome, Mayor Baraka.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate everybody on the call. Thank you, Kalina. I appreciate it. Welcome, Dr. Brown, to this, and I'll thank Tony for still hanging in there, making sure that these things take place. I'm glad everybody read the Mayor's Choice book club. They call me a terrorist. I just want to jump right into it. I like to get right into it. I don't want to waste any more time. We've already taken up a lot of time. So just want to get people's initial thoughts. Like, I like to start from the abstract and go to the concrete. So I like to get people's initial kind of thoughts in terms of their feelings around, how the book made you feel. Maybe incorporate the title in that a little bit if you can. And what do you think? Did she meet her objective or any objectives in terms of writing this book? And, so just from there, like, it's initial thoughts. Obviously, there's no wrong, right answer here. Just talk to me. Israel, I see you. Go ahead.
So one of my initial thoughts was, I in particular like how she had this emphasis on how her family was affected by multiple systems and the behavior outcomes of those. For instance, like when she met her biological father, who was locked up for a drug addiction, she also talked about how, like, he was a gentle human being. She humanized him. And I thought about how so many times, even within our own families, we dehumanize people based off of the struggles that they go through, not realizing that we're oppressed under multiple systems that causes us to have different behavior outcomes. I just liked how she humanized her own family, but also pointed to how the systems affected her family as well.
Anybody want to jump in?
Yeah, definitely. When I first saw the title of the book and, I heard that it was about the Black Lives Matter movement, I was not really surprised. I was like, yeah, that checks out. Because looking at the conversation surrounding Black Lives Matter, you see a lot of people sort of refer to demonstrators, regardless of if they're peaceful or not, as terrorists. And this book just really gave an insight towards, even prior to the summer of 2020, like the start of the movement, why it started, and it just sort of, just cuts off at that 2016 election. And I just found it to be very sort of inspiring and eye-opening to me.
For me, I would say not necessarily abstract, but more overarching trend that I see in the book is that sometimes when people speak critically in literature, the message can sometimes be lost and they can overcomplicate certain things. But I think here, especially in the first few pages, when she does like the outline of what the book is going to be talked about, it's simplistic, but still uses some critical language that I think is important and also very simple to understand. And I think the book is accessible to multiple audience types, and it's not just overcomplicated, like I said before.
Because it's more like a novel. Anybody else?
For me, I think one of the biggest things that stuck out to me was how she talked about how in a lot of the situations and complications that a lot of her family and the community around her went through, she said that they all saw it as a personal problem, that it was something that it was their fault, that her father couldn't get out of like the drug addiction. It was her brother's fault that like he kept going back into prison even though he had a mental health issue. And a lot of the times it's not a personal problem that they're going through, that it's actually a higher systemic problem that is causing them to have these issues. But for whatever reason, it's getting turned around and being put as something that you have to solve by yourself because it's an issue that you put on to yourself.
May I add something, Mayor Baraka? This is Kalina. I know I'm not a kid, but
Just once.
Okay, just one. I just want to say that it demystified her for me, because we always think that leaders who make global change have to be these dynamic people who have this very, elaborate past. And she was a regular girl growing up in the hood, like so many of us, dealing with family issues that so many of us have been a part of. And she channeled that into something amazing. So I thought that was really powerful. And that's all I have to say. Thanks.
That's usually the truth, though. But I asked about her meeting her objective, but even before we get there, anybody want to assume what her objective might have been in writing this book? One of her many objectives, probably.
I would say one of her many objectives, at least what I saw, was like trying to sort of expose like the criminal justice system that the US has, which is something that I've seen like even before reading it, is like they treat like prisoners like caged animals in pretty much a lot of states, and it's like it's not a very well solution to the problem that they're trying to solve, because like the more you treat them like as inhumane as you can and expect them to like return to a functioning society where they can be a part of, but it's just like how do I say it? It's just sorry, I'm stuck on long words. Maybe someone can jump on with this.
Yeah, that's fine. Want to help him out, somebody?
I was just gonna say I definitely agree with his interpretation of like trying to expose the criminal justice system. I also believe that when we read books and like literature, we should pay attention to author's purpose and how the book is written the way it is. So when we look at the book, it's more of a memoir instead of her just spitting out information, or her, just going through a regular interview and her saying like, yeah, I'm a girl from the hood, X, Y, and Z. But the way the book is written, it's to show that Miss Kalina, like what Miss Kalina was trying to explain about how our past and the way in which we grow up plays an essential part in how we try to make these monumental world-changing events, if that makes sense. So I think that the incorporation of both of their backgrounds and where they come from and how those things have influenced their perceptions of the world, or their interpretation of social justice, and to expose these different forms of double standards and injustices that happen in the criminal justice system and in like the US, and how anti-Blackness just plays a part in that writ large.
Anybody else? And before I tell you what the high school kids thought her objective was.
Okay. Well, I believe that her objective was to sort of provide a background on the movement, because when it comes to a lot of movements, a lot of times all most people say is just what's on TV, right? But just reading the book, you sort of just see how it all started, and it gives you a more understanding of what it actually is about.
Nice. All
I
right.
think also one of the more interesting things about it is that when they call you a terrorist, the word terrorist is a much more harsher word that we as people understand, aside from criminal. When people hear terrorist, it's kind of this like fear inducing word that's much more of a like scarier word to think about than the word criminal is. And a lot of the times when people think about the word terrorist, they think about people that are trying to radically change something that a lot of people don't want changed. And for the Black Lives Matter movement, even though the Black Lives Matter movement is about changing lives for the better of Black people, for people who do not want their lives to be upturned in the way that bringing equality and equity to Black people is, that's what they think of the Black Lives Matter movement, is that we're terrorists, that we're trying to change something far too radically that they don't want to be changed, because it'll change their lives incredibly too, to have such an equal ground for Black people.
Ashlyn, you got something to say about this?
Yeah, I agree with Michelle, and I really think that this book not only tells the story of her life, but it's also almost like an informational piece for people to educate themselves about what's really happening and what's been happening for decades. Because like a lot of people have not experienced the kind of discrimination that was depicted in this book. A lot of them have never, like been confronted by police the way that Patrice Colors' brothers were they didn't have to live the double life that she lived when she went to almost an all-white high school. They didn't really go through those difficulties and struggles that she went through. So they don't have the same perspective on different laws that might be passed because it won't affect them the same way that it affects the Black community. So I think that after reading this book, I have a better understanding of that. And I think other people will definitely have a better understanding of discrimination in this country.
Excellent. Clem, you want to add something for us?
Yes. You know what? It's Canela. When we read the book and she told somebody, well, we did the audio book, of course, so that she could get through it.
Of course.
And as much as, you talk about how you felt when she told someone she was reading the book, they said, well, what was going on in the book? And she said they were killing people. So she got that part, she understands that there was a lot of traumatic things going on. We talked a lot about when the girl had to leave home at Kalima's age, so she got, not a deep understanding of the other people, but she understood that surface stuff and it's important. It's still something that we could talk about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the other kids, which I thought was interesting, and I think some of you guys touched on it as well, was saying that she was trying to humanize the Black Lives Matter movement to make people, these are the high school kids, I think they were freshmen, as a matter of fact, were saying that, after they read the book, they had a deeper understanding of what Black Lives Matter was about. And she was trying to take people through that so that they would appreciate, and those are my words, appreciate her struggle and what the movement was about in general, and like really kind of juxtapose it against the word terrorist, right? So why terrorist versus all of the other kind of things that I've been going through and seeing, and boom, here it is. What do you think about that?
I was just gonna piggyback off of what Michelle said, when we really look at the word terrorist and how it's definitely one. I don't want to repeat what she said, but I also think that when we examine the word terrorist, similar to what I was saying before, I think it's also her indirectly talking about themes that she don't completely explain in the book. So the idea of Black Lives Matter being terrorists, or anything that is attached to Black flesh always being demonized. I think it's also the theory or the theme of people just being negrophobic, or anything that Black people decide to become radical about. It just becomes we are weaponized. We are seen as these over destructive weapons that just need to be annihilated and need to be feared because of what we tried to accomplish in the first place. So I think how she juxtaposed terrorists to just normal protesters or people who are activists is very important, and that it plays those themes even though she doesn't directly say it in the book.
On the money. Anybody else? Anybody disagree with that, or you want to add on?
Yeah, I just want to add on. I think that definitely goes in line with what Michelle said earlier. That word terrorist just gives you the impression that it's someone that's just out there to cause terror and chaos. And she just seeks to sort of change the narrative that a lot of people that do not wish for racial equality try to put on the screens every single time. So I do believe that that's why she used that word, because the word that a lot of people that fought for racial justice have heard before. They called MLK a terrorist, Malcolm X, all these wonderful leaders, and we just see that constant revolving pattern.
So the power of defining other people defining you versus you defining yourself, right? I like the way you talked about it, Ashlyn. Just you saying you have a different, or you have an understanding about what Black Lives Matter movement was about if you could help me out a little bit and let me know if there's any differences between what you felt before and after you read the book.
I think especially after this past year where the Black Lives Matter kind of really went into the mainstream media and everyone was talking about it, it was kind of like I had an understanding that there was oppression. There had always been oppression in this country, but I never really saw how many different ways and how these all impacted, like these all impacted someone's life in so many different ways, socially, mentally, financially. And what I really liked about the book is how Patrice Concolors, she described all the different ways that she was oppressed every single day. She had the food insecurity, her mother had her job was insecure, the drastic change in her community versus the white communities. And these were all happening at the same time. And even though looking back, it was like, obviously they're happening at the same time, but I hadn't really made that connection because especially in schools, they'll talk about the oppression, they'll talk about redlining and the school to prison pipeline, but they kind of keep them separate. So this book really put them all together, and she really explained how they were all affecting her at the same time, and she had to struggle with all of those things happening every day, 24/7. And I think that really was like a wow moment for me, because it was a struggle that I had understood, but not to the extent to what it happened for her.
It was really powerful. Because when you look at it in that context, you begin to see how all of these things impact you, like you said, simultaneously. And if you don't have the tools to really deal with these things, what do you think the result of that would be based on what we see every day in our community? Anybody? What do you think the result of that looks like? Of all of these systems acting on you at once?
I would say crime. You have high rates of drug addiction and just people that are really hurting but are unable to just get help because they don't have any help in their communities. You have people that resort to violence in an effort to just have some kind of release and just let things go. You have high suicide rates, and it's a very dire circumstances as a result of, first off, lack of investing into these communities, and second off, the systems of oppression.
I also think that it looks like generational curses. So you see just a pattern of people.
Can you explain that to me when you say generational curses? I don't know what that means.
So when I say generational curses, you see a pattern of negativity in Black homes. So like the people who grew up with no fathers, or people who grew up in broken homes, like just that very monolithic understanding of Black families and how we can only exist in these one ways. And they assume that this is by choice, or that, a young Black boy joining a gang is by choice and that he has other routes to take. But they ignore that when these systems simultaneously affect Black people, it becomes difficult for us to maneuver through life and just take these different negative outlets that are placed in our community strategically. And unless you've experienced it, it's hard for you to understand. And I think that's what Ashlyn was talking about how she had an idea of what anti-Blackness was for Black people, but once she have read the book and then she see how they all work together to strategically make sure that Black people, take these negative routes, it becomes easier to understand these generational curses or why things are the way they are with Black people in the first place. So I would just say when these system of oppressions work together, it's strategically put in our communities, not only by white people, but just by these structures that are already it's like you're kind of a damned if you do and damned if you don't, especially if you already meet the quote unquote stereotype of what it means to be a Black person and grow up Black. So I think just not to be repetitive, like just like this very hard cycle that you have to break. And even if you do good in school, you get good grades, it's like you still have to go the extra mile. Like it's still you try to break the curse, and then you're met with nonsense as soon as you try to, break that stereotype.
You guys will get in trouble in other states talking about this stuff, Anybody anybody else want to add anything to this? To that? I thought those was great comments, by the way, but yeah.
I think adding on to what Mercy said, in the sense that like even trying to break out of this cycle, even if you see a successful Black person, or you see a lot of in the media, like they're trying to say, oh, Black people can be successful too, that doesn't mean that they're going to stay successful. Those generational curses and those cycles that all these systems of oppression continue to put onto Black people, they're not changing anytime soon. They're not something that have broken, and that Black people who have become successful are out of that system, or out of the systems that continue to come against us. They're still working against us. And that's why a lot of the times you see those Black successful people, the generations that come after them are right back in the same spot that they got out of. And it's not something where you can just say, oh, this is a one-time thing where they're successful and forever on they're going to be successful. It's not like how white people can be successful and their children can continue to reap off of the successes of their past ancestors or the past generations. Black people do not have that luxury of having that continuation because of the systems that are continuing on to oppress us.
That's a great analysis.
I'm so happy Michelle brought up like the Black people that they promote in mainstream media. If we really pay attention to the type of successful Black people that they portray, they're either in like sports or entertainment. Very few do you see like Black people who don't provide pleasure to like non-Black people, or like some sort of like entertainment, or like some sort of other, like just adding on to the enjoyment in white people's life. Very like I've never in my life have I walked into a hospital and seen a Black woman doctor that could treat me, right? So it's like when you like, I haven't seen a Black woman that's an engineer that's accessible to me, or that's in my neighborhood. It's very important to pay attention to the type of Black people that are successful, and that the type of Black people that young Black people look up to. Is like, these are very isolated events in which Black people are successful. And if you were to tell them to like, it's just very funny about like the type of Black people that they choose to promote, and how there's just such isolated and unique events that these Black people have gone there. And also, I bet you if you were to talk to those Black people who are super duper successful, the type of mental strain and there's other forms of racism that they have to go through. Like those systems don't just disappear because they're higher on like a economic level. Like there's still a socio-economic level of how they have to maneuver through white people on a daily basis.
Yeah, definitely what Mercy said, with how there are specific groups of people that just want to outline as how can Black people be oppressed when most NBA players, this and that, and you just sort of just get the same thing over and over again. I also just want to add that there's successful Black people going outside of entertainment that did make it up there, like namely Barack Obama or Kamala Harris, that they are exceptions, basically. And if you really ever ask them, what is your story? You hear a lot of things that you would not find in the story of a successful white person. And despite how they may have overcame these obstacles in a way, these obstacles are still there. It shouldn't be as hard as it was for them, for every single Black person. The point is for a Black person in power to not be an exception, but rather like the norm, like it's just kind of what you expect-ish.
Israel, I haven't heard you in a minute.
I definitely agree with everything that was said. And one of the things that I took note of was what Shakina said, there's obstacles in their stories that like in these successful Black people that still points to how a system continues to oppress us. And white people they're not in a position where the system is oppressing them. So their stories of success always looks much different. sometimes those barriers are not there, those barriers are removed. But when you have all these barriers in place, it's kind of hard trying to be that exception to the rule. And even within our own community, we always tell kids like, oh, we can look up to Barack Obama, we can look up to these successful Black people to make it out, but we're not making note of the barriers that exist, the barriers to education, the criminal justice system, how we continue to suspend kids for very low, like disrespecting a teacher. We send kids home for 5 days for doing that. And we don't look at the barriers that like continue to stop us from being those successful people.
So since we're on that, I like to, like in the book, Patrice talks about her relationships with folks that helped her kind of deal with all of the stuff that she had to deal with. And I want to use the right words because we often use words that we don't know where we got them from that really takes away the power or the meaning of what we're actually going through, right? We use words that we get from mainstream media and we repeat them to describe stuff that really kind of almost belittles the journey itself or what we're actually trying to describe. So I don't want to say stuff, because it is a lot more impactful than stuff, right? The barriers that were put in their way, the systems of oppression that she had to grapple with, navigate, her family. I don't know if the family was dysfunctional. I don't know if I want to use that. I want to, the family was certainly impacted by external forces that created problems for them and broke it down in many different ways. The family probably functioned the way it was supposed to function in this kind of environment, right? Given the tools that they have. So it wasn't a dysfunction. It probably was functioning the way people decided that it should function. So, so she had people in her life that helped her navigate these issues, right? So how did these people do that in her? And are there people in our lives that we think that we need to, or young people that we need to grab a hold of that can help us as well? Like, what do they look like? What are the characteristics of these people and what should they be doing? That along with who helped her get out of this, deal with this stuff. Because she became the leader of the Black Lives Matter movement, right? She could have easily become a myriad of different things.
I would say that one person that was pretty helpful in her journey was, I think it was her art history teacher. When she was homeless, I believe that her teacher took her and a friend of hers in and just sort of provided shelter for them and a refuge. And she just sort of just had that, adult figure in her life that she could turn to for help. I think that is very important when it comes to children and raising young people, to always have at least one adult that you can go to. And I also think that people that sort of really helped her a lot was from her father's side of the family, Gabriel. Despite how they sort of quote unquote ghosted her when he was in prison, they made her feel at home, for the first time. And one thing that I kind of noticed is that the reason why she was able to sort of feel that way was due to the fact that this was a middle class family. And it just really stuck out to me how certain things are privileges, because with her mother, she could not really have that, safe space, because her mother was just exhausted, quite frankly, like doing multiple jobs, raising the kids all on her own, and she just never, was there for Patrice the way I would say Patrice wanted her mother to be there for her. But then you see the middle class family, which is they don't really have to worry much about like paying the bills and stuff like that, and they sort of have more, opportunity to just, I don't know, just love each other like a family. And that was just one thing that stuck out to me.
You can't let her just say all of that stuff and nobody else responds. Come on. That was a lot of stuff.
Another person that I think really had an impact on Patrice Concolors was her teacher, Mrs. Goldberg, because she would give her books when she was in school, and they talked about the civil rights movement and different leaders that became a part of the civil rights movement. And I think this kind of planted a seed in her that activism was a thing and that she herself, as a Black person, could advocate for equal rights and for less oppression in her community. And I think that this kind of stuck with her through her struggles because she knew that she could fight against the systems that were oppressing her. And this kind of, I think, started that motion in her to fight for her rights.
That's good. What about in the present sense? Go ahead, Michelle, before I move on. Go ahead.
I was going to say one of the things, like I agree with what Ashlyn and Shakina said. I also think that it also boils down to having someone or people around you that believe in you and believe in what you can do as a person. Because a lot of the times Black people don't have people in their communities that believe in them or believe in what they're going through. And like Patrice Concolors, like she had to create her own community of people that believed in her and understood that what she was going through was real and that they gave her that unconditional support to go through whatever she was going through, whether it be making the Black Lives Matter movement.
Can I interrupt you, please? I just want you to pinpoint she had to create her own people, like environment. Like what does that look like? I mean, what does she have to do? Yeah.
Creating her own community was finding people that didn't necessarily go through the same things she went through, but understood her struggles and actually kind of not inherited, but like brought it into themselves and like understood that that was a part of her. And like that was what made Patrice who she was, and that she found those people who understood that and wouldn't second guess anything that she was saying or second guess her intentions or her actions, and that they would stick right with her no matter what she was going through because they believed in what she could do, and that in return she reciprocated that and believed in what they could do, and she was able to create that community around her and be able to do the things that she did, like create the Black Lives Matter movement.
Awesome. I've been trying to create a community around me for years. I'm trying to figure out how she did that. I'm learning from that myself. But at the end of it, like what does a young person have to do? Because that's a huge lift to create a community of people around them that supports them and understands them.
I think it's kind of something that happens naturally, I would say. Like this year, this school year was actually the first time that I ever really felt like I had a community in some kind of way. An amazing woman, she's the vice principal of this Ridge Campus High School. She sort of took me under her wing as her mentee. And this last school year rather, decided to create the Social Justice Club. And that right there, I would say, is a community. Like we have organized book drives, toy drives, poetry slams, Astor showcases. They had a 3-day peace walk where they walked around like the community, holding signs with wonderful messages on them. And I just feel like that right there was just creating that community, just organizing and bringing people together that want to create change. Because I don't know who mentioned it before at the start of the discussion, but they said that people saw their issues as a personal problem. When you stop seeing it as a personal problem and as a systematic problem, and it's like, oh, you have a story, I have a story too. You just sort of bring these people together. They're like, so it's not a me thing, it's an us thing. Let's change that together. And that's how you just have that community.
Nice. What if you're in a situation where, go ahead, Israel.
Oh no, I was gonna say building your own community, it starts with being vulnerable with the people around you and understanding that your story is, while it's unique to you, a lot of other people share your experiences as well. And you never know how you might liberate somebody just by sharing your story, how you voice what you've gone through. Yeah, so creating your community is sharing that story, and that community can grow into a place where you disrupt systems of power. And I think that like being vulnerable is just the most powerful thing you can do.
Go ahead, Mercy.
I was also going to say that at my graduation, the keynote speaker said something like, if you have friends that don't inspire you, they're a cage. So I think when it comes to like building community, it's important for you to pinpoint those people who truly do inspire you and who motivate you to actually, do the things that you want to do. And sometimes it can be hard because some people can seem so genuine. But I think that words, it goes farther when you actually do, because people can scream that they're activists but don't do things that activists do. So that's why I wouldn't label myself as an activist, because I know that these words, we need to be very careful with our words when it comes to like protesting and true activism. Like, are we actually going out and making structural changes? And I think that pinpointing those people who actually will physically go out and make structural changes is important to building the type of community that you would want around you if you seek to see material change.
That's all right, because there are a lot of people who yell, but that don't mean they activists. I want to get on two things because we're running out of time. I want to talk about two very specific things. One about power and the other one about our relationships with police and the criminal justice system. So this idea of power is incredibly important, particularly to us as we struggle, because we're trying to seize power. And I think sometimes we have a kind of not so clear definition of what power actually is, and so in your perspective, like in your view, who do you think has power in your community? And I mean real, nothing that no cliche stuff that you read somewhere. I mean, like for real, like
you
being
like
FR on a thing.
Being in leadership, Mayor, you have power. Kalima being in leadership, she has power. Dr. Brown, she has power. So it depends on the place and the space and what exactly you want to garner. So I think that the struggle, is a constant struggle, because when people have leadership and others don't like the leader, then they want to struggle to take that person down, because unfortunately we have this crabs in the barrel thing going on all the time. And the struggle for that I see is learning to share in the power. One person could be the leader, but we need to learn, like the students just said, to share in it, build communities around one another, find our commonalities, our common struggle, what the goal is for us all, and we need to all work towards it.
Right.
Like this last week, I said, when you said your first run, when I become mayor, we all become mayor. We still all trying to all be mayors. So we have to work on it. But it's only going to be one person with the title, but we all still have the ability to, try and do something to support one another, support the city and the community as a whole, because we'll never get by, or we'll never get up by, continuing to struggle with one another.
Excuse me, Mother, you are speaking so well. If you want to move into the camera, please feel free to do so.
I don't.
We hear your wonderful comments, but we don't see you.
So, well, I mean, and I guess people confuse position with power, because being in the front don't necessarily mean you have the power. But any of you young people want to chime on that? Who you think got the power in your community?
So I would say, I was also going to say, oh, go ahead. You can go ahead.
All right, thank you. I was gonna say that like power is really like it's just a term that anyone like the way I say everyone has power. Like I can have power, you can have power, everyone in this room can have powers. The only thing that really makes a difference is the moves we make. It's like someone with power, I don't know, could just like I can't really put much on that. That's really much like what I thought about, which is like everyone just has power, just like the moves that you play at can really determine like how people see on you.
Anybody else before I move on? Go ahead, Mercy.
I was just gonna say, heavy on like the part we said is the moves you make, because I definitely agree that sometimes position and power can be conflicted, because sometimes the person who is actually seen isn't the one who's actually making the vital decisions. So for example, like we can do all these talks about how like our like for example the school to prison pipeline, like how our schools are structured a certain way. We hear a lot of talk about how like we are building people, like we are making Black children be prepared for the prison and justice system. But then when we look in our schools, like we still have metal detectors, or we still have, like the halls are still like peely. We still have like roles, all these things. So it's like, it's about the certain like material changes that must occur after the conversation. So if you really care about like those different, if you really care about those actual policy changes, I think it starts within like the first places that our kids go to. So making sure that our schools don't feel like somewhere, don't feel like an actual prison, like a prison.
So who has the power to move those metal detectors?
So I don't know, because nobody educates us about how we can actually make those policy changes unless you go outside of school and join programs like YMS. It may teach you certain things.
Let's focus there before we go into the policing. Who has the power to move the metal detectors out of schools? In your mind, who has the power to do that like tomorrow?
I don't know if it's the state, because when I used to debate and stuff, and I used to go to these predominantly white schools, they never used to have it. So I don't know if it's state legislated, where it's like certain Black communities or places where crimes are high, it must be there. So I genuinely don't know. Maybe it's like an individual school decision, because it varies throughout the state.
So just a yes or no. Do you think that the superintendent has the power to move metal detectors? Or is it probable?
Yes.
Probable? Yes, no?
I
No.
believe so. Maybe
Yeah.
because like we probably
Yes
deal
or
with like
no?
money.
Yes. In fact, let's put our hands
sorry.
up.
Sorry.
The superintendent has the power to move the metal detectors. Superintendents. Police departments. Police department can move the metal detectors. The principal of the school.
I think it's the principal.
The state legislature. The people who make the laws. The governor of the state of New Jersey. The students and the parents. So you know what I would say? All of the above. So when we're having these discussions about power, we need to have a whole kind of meeting about what power is, because when you're reading Black Lives Matter, right? You're reading this book. What is she trying to do? What is Black Lives Matter trying to do? What are they trying to do?
Eliminate the injusticeness that like Black people receive by like the government.
Yeah. They're trying to change the systems that you're talking about, right? Don't you have to have a level of power to be able to do that? Yeah?
Yeah.
You don't have to have power to change the system?
Yeah, you have to have power. But, like you said, it takes everybody. Like we could, like all the teachers and students could say, we don't want the metal detectors, right? And it still won't pass if like the superintendent or principal is like, no. So like you mentioned, yes, it does take everybody, because it each have different levels of power. Like it takes power to be able to actually speak out about everything. And provide these people that can literally get it done with how to get it done. And it also takes power for those people to actually get it done.
So everybody may arrive at a decision at a different place, different time, in a different way.
Yeah.
But the power is something like leverage then. We need to really think about that, right? Because if you say that you don't have any power, then you shouldn't really try to change anything because it won't change if you don't have any power, right? Or I don't make any sense.
No, you definitely make sense, Mayor. Power only happens when people use their collective energies to organize against certain things or for certain things. So everybody has power, but in order to do like change, get rid of metal detectors, it takes collective power to do that. It takes the power of community organizers, parents, students. It takes the power of principals adding their voices. It takes the power of people's struggles to get rid of things that oppress us and to create new environments and new communities and structures. But everybody has power.
That's right. So if it's a big boulder in front of my door, a big boulder, I come out, I'm trying to push the boulder. I'm using all of the power that I have to push this boulder. I might move it an inch. I can't move it all the way. I might move it an inch because by myself, I'm just not strong enough. Well, I don't have enough power. Then I get my brother comes, he helps, we both push it together. We move it a little further. Then my mother fusses at us, tells us why are we taking so long? She comes and she helps us push it. Before you know it, the whole family's on this boulder. It might take us an hour or two, but we got the boulder out of the way, right? And just think of it like that in some capacity. The last kind of thing I want to jump into is the police and their relationship to people in our community. Why? And after the stuff you've read and all of this other stuff that I'm sure you already know, why do you think police in our community are having these kind of issues or problems or with the residents in these communities, that people that look like us? Why are they having these problems?
I think it was the way policing was designed. It was never designed to serve and protect us. It was more so to protect the powers that be. For instance, like the earliest history of policing was people catching slaves, runaway slaves. And the system kind of evolved out of that. Not only that, like the history of the country, slaves was used as a commodity to make more money, cash crops, trade, and things like that. So the system of policing was designed to protect the economic viability of the country. So the reason why they have these kind of relations they have with our communities is because it wasn't designed to serve and protect us. The values at the core are not for us. It was for it was to protect that, like I said, the economic viability of the country and state.
Anybody else want to disagree or add on?
Yeah, I wish to add on. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that the police is not a solution at all. Sorry for the dark thing, it's pretty dark outside.
That's all
But
right.
yeah, I think it has a lot to do with the fact that the police is not the solution. Like, I honestly just don't get why they do so many things that they do. We don't focus, people don't try to get to the root of the problem. They have more reactive responses than proactive responses. The point isn't to take care of criminals. The point is to prevent people from becoming criminals in the first place. And it has a lot to do with investing into these communities. Like, it kind of like saddens me sometimes when I see little children, little boys with guns, because like, you're a child, you shouldn't be doing that. But at the same time, it's like, we look at these communities and it's like, what other outlet do they have? What recreational centers are there? What blue spaces are there? What social services are there to help these people cope with drug addiction and all those things that they are facing? And when they turn to crime, people just see that and they're like, oh, they're committing crime, let's get the cops in there. But people don't think as to why exactly is all of this happening. You know, like, this is as a result of, quite frankly, centuries of oppression. And this is the result that we see today, but people just have reactive like, responses to it by putting more cops and even more cops. And the problem never ends, because I think that for, you know, a lot of people, let me say, the police isn't really over here to protect us, but rather to protect people from us. And that definitely plays a part in the relationship.
I think also a part of it comes from the fact that, like Shakina said, like, these are systems of oppression that have been there for centuries, and that it's on both sides, from our communities where we don't have recreational centers, where everything kind of leads to us kind of being exposed to criminal activity from a young age, and that there isn't places for us to have outlets aside from criminal activities. But on the side of the police officers, like Israel said, where it started from slave patrols, but also the fact that it doesn't take much to train to be a police officer. It takes anywhere between like 6 months to like a year to train to be a police officer. And that's such a drastic difference from training for other jobs like being a lawyer or a doctor, anything else that actually has to do with you interacting with people and working with people. Police officers do the same interactions with people, yet they're trained in such a far less time, and it's such an easy job to get into, where you aren't screened for what your opinions are on Black people, where you can just get trained to handle a gun, to be able to handcuff
On
somebody,
any people,
to be able
by
to
the
do
way.
all these things, but you aren't actually like, you aren't like, I don't even know what the word is, but like, you aren't kind of explored for what your views are on the people that you are interacting with, and the Black people that are disproportionately targeted by the police. And that the, like, albeit doctors and lawyers, they obviously do not have a clean slate, but there are so many more things that they have to go through in order, the time, the energy to actually be able to deal with people, and that they are held more accountable than police officers are when they have mishaps, when there are malpractices in the medical field. And it's that there is no accountability on that part of actually the timing it takes to train police officers, but also their actions afterwards, where the departments don't say, where the departments say there's not much we can do about it, that they're saying we're hands off on this because it was their actions and not ours.
Right. That's pretty comprehensive response there. Anyone else on that? Or how do we begin to change the relationship, the power dynamics between police and our community?
I think a way that we can start to change this is, like Shakina said, to find the root problem and why all of this is happening. And I think another important part is to not rely on law enforcement as much as we do, because especially in Black communities, something really minor could be going on and they'll immediately, like, the cops will immediately be called instead of trying to fix the situation and explaining why this is happening and where the problem started. Because, like, for example, like in the media, Karens, they'll use law enforcement as a way of being racist towards Black people. And I think that's not what should be happening. We should not be using law enforcement as a tool of oppression. And the reason why law enforcement has been able to be used in this way is because they've always been given so much power, and they're seen as almost the savior of our communities, when we can be the savior of our own communities by giving our communities the resources that they need to be mentally well, socially well. And if we do this, then we won't need law enforcement because we will be taking care of our own people by preventing crimes and preventing criminals.
We basically really can just shut the whole discussion down after you just did all of that. I mean, great day in the morning. I mean, that was like a heck of a, summation right there, and that's real. And I haven't heard it put that eloquent from adults, in terms of how we should change or why we should change those relationships. Anybody else? Because I have to. I'll be on here for the next hour talking to you guys, but I got to get out of here, unfortunately. But I need somebody to close us out. And you got to do a little bit better than what Ashlyn did. I know it's hard, but you got to top that.
I'm not sure this is gonna top it, but like I feel like one major thing, like police systems like around the country could do is like change like attitudes. Like most people, like when they call police, they have like this aggression like aura around them. Like, and if you compare that with like an officer that like hangs around like neighborhood, like passing out drinks or like buying kids, just being like a positive impactment on like youthful lives. So that's really what like that's like pretty much the future of our countries. The young minds are just sponges that absorb whatever they can get without filtering it. So it's like we can't really we can choose what they can take in. For example, like I just said with the police and like much more friendly actions. And I feel like if like the budget is like I think around $600 billion for like law enforcement. Like I feel like if they like narrow that down and probably use it something else, like I don't know, host like community gatherings like for children, because not much of those are being like put around nowadays.
Right.
At least where I see. I feel like that's like a pretty big step forward to like trying to solve all these cases, or at least just like fix a portion of it.
Well, I appreciate you guys. If nobody ever told you, you're very, very, very brilliant. I appreciate this conversation deeply. It's probably the best part of my day, the conversation I've had with you. Hopefully we get to do it again. Some other books that I would love to share with you guys, or you share with me. If you have any ideas for books that we should be making the whole city read, please, get it to us. We'll make those things happen. But I definitely appreciate it. I would say keep doing what you're doing, keep studying, keep talking, and you have more power than you imagine. Let me just say that. You have a lot more power than you imagine. So thank you, Tony, Kalina, Dr. Brown, everybody, all of you for getting on with us. Appreciate you. And Kanila hiding in the background. Thank you too.
Thank you, Mayor Baraka,
Right.
and thank everyone. I also want to take a minute and thank the City of Newark Communications Department, the Director Sandra Roberts and Theo Liggins, who co-hosted this event. He was in the background helping out, making sure that everything went well. So thank you, brilliant, thoughtful, and articulate young people. I appreciate you all being on here. And if you don't know anything else, and you do know things about yourself, but if you don't know anything else, know how brave you are to come and to speak openly and publicly and give your opinions and be authentic about it. They say that public speaking is like the number one fear that people have. And, so it's something in our schools that we aren't able, or we haven't yet figured out how to give enough experiences in. So, to be able to do that, you might think, oh, it's not the big deal. I just went on and did this. No, it's a big deal that you're able to do this at this point in your lives. And it means that you're going to go on and just do even more greater sharing of ideas and developing of ideas as you move on in your lives. So what I want to say in closing is that we have all of your email addresses and phone numbers, so we will get back in touch with you for other events and to make sure that you know what else is going on with the Mayor's Book Club, and keep an eye on the city website for other things Mayor Baraka is doing a lot of other things, whether you live in Newark, study in Newark, or work in Newark. The city of Newark welcomes you to be a part of everything that's going on in our city. And this is the book, When They Call You a Terrorist. Newark Public Library. This is the young adult version. The difference, yes, that is it. The difference between this and the paperback is the same text, but this is a nice hardcover book. And this book, as you guys noticed, it has pictures in it, and it has notes, that she wrote. So it has author's notes, and it has a lot of photographs in it, to help you to really be able to visualize, Patrice's life that she talks about. So you already have your books, but let all of your friends and your family know. All they have to do is walk into a Newark Public Library main branch or any of the branches and ask for the book. If they don't remember the name of the book, When They Call You a Terrorist, just say, I'd like the mayor's book club book, please. And then you'll be able to get that book. So thank you so much. Goodbye, everyone. Stay safe.